Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I would like to ask each and every one of you that if you enjoyed these shows, please hit like, share, and subscribe after you view the show. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, world, and welcome to another episode of the Crisis Victory Show. Today, I asked my co-host to come on the air because we want to have a topical discussion relating to where church and state apply in the modern age that we're living in today. And I'm going to come at it from the platform of being a pastor. I've been a senior pastor for 26 years. I have a postdoctorate degree in pastoral counseling with an emphasis in my secondary was in eschatology, which should be very valuable in this particular conversation. Pete is a former spy. Pete was military for a number of years, and I believe that his participation with regarding this conversation today, he would be the perfect person to share the pros and cons with me relative. Pete, say good morning to everybody.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's always fun to talk with my buddy Hal, and so I'm looking forward to having this conversation. Something I think about quite a lot.
Yeah. And you know what, Pete? So many people have reached out in these last few months with regard to, well, you're a pastor. How come you're talking about politics? How come you're expressing your views and your opinions when you should be staying clerical in the way that you're approaching life and your audience? So today, folks, we're going to answer these questions for you. In the first place, as I said and stated to you earlier, eschatology was my secondary when I was in my final 3 years of getting my doctorate completed. And what eschatology is an examination, a study, and a research of the end of days that are aligned primarily with Ezekiel, Daniel, and the book of Revelations. So let me get into this right now. As we see the approaching of certain signs and symbols that 30 years ago, when I was in seminary and studying and learning about these things, never, Pete, did I ever expect to see them come into fruition in my lifetime. But here they are. And to give some information regarding that statement, last year, the state of Montana shipped off 2 red heifers to Israel. Now, the red heifer would be completely turned into ash, and the ashes would be put inside of the building of the third temple to consecrate the temple. As you all, or most of you probably know, the third temple is constructed where at 3.5 years, the Antichrist will walk into it. He will declare himself God, and he blasphemes the temple. And this kicks in that instant a spiritual warfare unparalleled by anything we've ever seen in our times. And to make this clear, last fall, there was a signing of a peace treaty between Israel and Palestine. And the peace treaty in the Bible, it explains how this is going to be short-lived. Well, 3 days after the peace treaty was signed, Pete, there was actual missiles flying in the airs. So it didn't hold. And as scripture prophesied to us, it would be very short-lived. Now we've entered into a state which could be identified as the beginning of the 7-year tribulation era. And the reason I say this is the Bible commands us to share with all of you that are unaware that during the signing of the agreement between Palestine and Israel to ensure peace, that is the moment that the Bible is descriptive about kicking off the tribulation era. But, understand this too, Pete, and the audience, is our time and our calendar and our schedules isn't necessarily God's time and our schedules. It's to him, a minute to us, to him is 1,000 years or 10,000 years. So and you keep this in context as we have this discussion. Now, Pete, one of the biggest things that I'm getting from my audience, in my Facebook accounts, my LinkedIn accounts, a lot of different people are, you're a senior pastor, yet you're talking political agendas. You're expressing your views, your opinions. That's not what clergy is supposed to do. But that's where you're wrong. It tells us in Scripture to study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman needeth not be ashamed, rightfully dividing the word of truth. Truth, the key component. Now we're dealing in a media frenzy era of so much misinformation, and this is on both political sides. We're not picking out any political side today. That's BS. I'm not going to fall into that well. But I'm going to tell you this. You need to take a look at the actions because Christ said, be the example. So when you see something that doesn't align with the way Christ is, and his teachings to us, then we are supposed to stand up. And those of us that are ordained, those of us that have a responsibility to educate and bring forth accurate, truthful information and discernment, if you will, have an obligation to overcome evil with good. And when I say evil, I say on a globalized scale. I'm not just picking out what we've been observing here in the United States. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, folks, that aligns with exactly what we are witnessing, observing, and experiencing at this day and time in our history. Pete, do you have any reflection on that?
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of things and left it wide open for me. So I guess I'll just step in and say, it's yeah, a pastor is supposed to guide its flock. And I
Yes.
recall being in Afghanistan and watching how that actually happens with actual herders, goats, sheep, whatever it's going to be. And some of them needed a plunking on the head with a rock. Some of them needed a rock thrown in front of them, to guide them and go this way. Hey, dummy, come back. Some of the sheep or goats insist upon going further and further away. And that sheep herder can't just focus on that one goat, going to protect it. But you're actually managing a thing that tends to go in one direction, but within that direction, it goes left, right, stop,
Yes.
And so the herder is there, and that's, I'm using this analogy. So when we look at any kind, like, have you ever noticed how that whenever someone says in these times that we live in, or in this economy, no matter what year it is, no matter how good or bad the economy is, right, we tend to have this state of fear because we don't know what's next. We don't have enough. Like we even if we had enough, that would be the new level of not enough, And so we're always trying to create this sense of safety and stability. Some people feel safe when they're left alone. Some people want to be part of a collective. And so when you look over your shoulder and that shepherd's back there, or he's in front of you, or he's let you wander so that you can come back, like all of that, right, is sort of how I see pastors. And I'm saying pastors, imams, whatever, any kind of holy man who's there to guide people in the faith. There's a lot that goes on with that. And so, of course, you have political thoughts. Of course, you're going to guide people towards where they need to be. But every goat, every sheep, every lamb is going to be slightly different. And you trust your pastor is going to understand when you need to walk, when you need to roam, when you need to come back. And that will be part of the overall agreement within that group. How am I doing? Does that make sense?
Man, you hit it right on the head. And I'll tell you something, when you talk about how people observe a pastor, his role in their life, his role in the creation of his congregation, his flock, the specifics that we are ordained, if you will, to share, to convince, to educate, and to prepare our followers and our congregations. This is a time of great confusion. And the Thessalonican proverb explains this to us. It says that in these final days, as we approach the final days, there will be a great falling away, and even the very elect shall become deceived. And this is the instrument of devil, because you have to remember when God cast Lucifer and 26 other angels out of heaven that followed him to earth, he gave the devil dominion, but he also gave us the free thought. And a lot of people have asked me, Pastor, Christ gave us 2 commandments. One is to love God the Father above all things, and the other is to love one another. So why do we struggle with that? And I'll answer your question. We started struggling with that the moment Eve took a bite into that apple. We became born of the sinful nature. So we spend our entire life avoiding sin if possible, but when it comes up to become repentant, to try to not repeat sin on a daily basis, instead bring Christ into us for our preservation, our eternal preservation, if you will. And right now what I see, as I said, 30 years ago, I was in seminary. I look back over the years, the process, the procedure, if you will, of the advancement of the culmination of prophetic completion. And we're seeing it right now, like the drying up of the Euphrates River, the fact that a red heifers, even in Israel, is astronomical with regard to acceleration. We also hear that in the book of Revelations that John wrote on the Isle of Patmos, he's explaining that these signs will all come rapidly. It'll be like a thief in the night as Christ will return. But Pete, what's happening is with technology, with the creation of AI, with those that are in a greater power than presidents or prime ministers or any of these people, there is a shadow world that has been created and been active for centuries. It's now becoming exposed because we have technology today to expose it. But we've all kind of felt that underlying shadow world that is existent during our time right now. But what we weren't prepared for was the rapidity of the end of days and the culmination of the completion of prophetics. May 14th, 1948, 4:35 in the afternoon, the newly formed United Nations decreed that Israel became a sovereign nation. After over 2,500 years, Israel returned in the blink of an eye. Now we have the first, there are 7 strains of prophetic completion. That is the first of the 7. So what we're seeing now, people say, well, there's always been rumors of wars. There's always been these kind of conflicts, kingdoms and nations rise up against. Ladies and gentlemen, this is part of the Great Deception. What we're seeing today is far and way beyond our understanding of the rumors of wars in the Olivet Discourse, which is Matthew chapter 24. Every one of you should read that. And it talks about what will be the signs of these end of days. Well, look at how divided we are in this country. Not since the Civil War has the United States of America been so divided and full of anger and hatred, where brother turns against brother and sister turns against sister. And we see the conflict, the political arena in every one of our households, and how we have a lack of respect or understanding for how somebody else might feel or look at what their belief structure is. So, Pete, what I say to the audience and to you, my beloved brother, is we have to be able to approach one another in a mature and realistic way, that it's okay to believe different than I do, and let's not hate each other for that. Instead, let's find a medium point in this and learn to work together so we can get through these troubling times that we find ourselves in right now. What's your take on that?
When do you enter into a troubling time? Again, like this goes back to this thing we discussed a second ago, where we always say, in these times, in this economy, right? Like it's always horrible. And then you're like, well, is it always horrible? When do we enter into that zone? And how do we maybe find more bliss and joy and happiness and fellowship? It's easy to fall into the negative things, but that's what I think about, Hal, is how do we meter the good into our lives so that we don't just focus on, like, just to bring politics into this for a second. Right now, there's a lot of people uncomfortable with the way the United States is going. Politically, they aren't comfortable, and they're not going to be comfortable. And then when that flips over to the next party and the Democrats are in charge, the exact same thing will be happening. There'll be a whole lot of people who are very uncomfortable with the direction the nation is going, right? And so there's always this lack of comfort as the nation makes its thing. And I would submit, this is not an endorsement for anybody, if I was to say to you, hey, Hal, this outcome is coming during this president's term, and it was an obviously good outcome, we would reject the good outcome because of a political lean, which seems to undermine overall our mental health. And again,
my point exactly.
Either side, but yeah, we could get the very thing that we would think would be wonderful, but if the wrong party or the wrong person delivers it, then gosh, we hate it. And it seems like maybe I'm talking like Donald Trump. I'm just saying in general.
No, got it.
Whoever
you should be able to talk any way you want. That's my point, Pete.
Yeah.
You should be able to express your true. I have a lot of Republican Party members in my family. I'm a Democrat. I've been one for 47 years voting, and they show me respect as I show them respect. And
sure,
because I took an oath when I was 17 years old back in 1971 to go into the United States Army and defend my country. My primary reason was because my brother was shot in Quezon Valley in 1969. And he did survive. He ended up doing 23 years in the Corps for his country. To me, he's a hero. He's a Purple Heart recipient. Stayed his post and did his duty. But the point that I'm making is this: him and I disagree on the political realm a lot. He's a Trump supporter. I'm anti-Trump. But what we do with all of us is we respect what the other has to say. We listen to it. We react to it in a positive sense. And as you know, in my Facebook account, you see a lot of people attacking me aggressively that are the Republican Party. And I don't fight back. I send them, I say, well, thank you for your comment. I appreciate your sharing, and nothing but respect to you, sir, on your belief. And that is, maybe it's only one or two people you can reach out in a day to do that with. But the point is, you're reaching out in that day and you're showing that, hey, it's okay for you and I to disagree. Let's find a resolution instead. And this is the topic that God put on my heart this morning to share about the topic of church and state. What you have to do as a pastor, and I'm loving what I'm seeing in the church communities right now, because I'm seeing pastors finally coming forward and talking about sensitive subjects that they would never discuss in church 10 years ago, because they don't want to lose congregational member, or they want to grow the congregation. So they'll say things that are pleasing and beautiful and wonderful and la-di-da-di-da. Why everybody walks out of that church and they're back in a hell that they can't seem to get away from. So what we need to do as pastors is become aggressive to the problems and address the problem in an open public forum, meaning our church or wherever we go. My God, I've gone in restaurants and ordered a meal, struck up a conversation in religion, and within minutes, we've got 20 to 30 people in the same restaurant all joining in. And I love that. And what I love the most about that is the commonality of a feeling of being able to trust a stranger, and that's okay. As you know, in my ministry, I took sabbatical because I was working for the Department of Justice, and I couldn't be the senior pastor of my own church during that time and jump off on missions in foreign countries and try to put that stuff out of my head when I got back stateside. My bishop recognized my calling to serve my country in that capacity and granted me a 4-year sabbatical. During that time, I was able to look and reflect differently towards the way that I had been trained and instructed to preach to a congregation. And what I found was they need to have the truth delivered to them, and then they need to have evidentiary backup to the statements so they can support the truth. This artificial intelligence, oh my God, let me tell you something. It is rapidly taking over free thought, free will, free mind on a global basis. And people can literally create whatever they want to create that they believe. And what do we do if it's inaccurate? People fall into that well. This is the Thessalonican proverb that could not be completed, Pete, until this particular era in time in history, because the great falling away is manifested through a misalignment, if you will, of faith and truth. So I think that, I know based on 30 years of studying, that we really truly are in a different state of the end of days, because we've all grown up hearing that stuff. We've also known for many, many centuries, each generation would think that maybe this was the generation. But what we didn't have in the former times, brother, is the completion, the rapid completion of prophecy. That is now, that was stated to us through the prophets aeons ago. And now in our lifetime, one, boom, 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 one after another, they're falling right into play. And it's extremely important that if we're in the business of saving souls, which is my business, to love one another, to share with one another. And yes, even Christ got angry when he was flipping the tables of the money changers in front of the synagogues when he was 31 years old, I believe. But the point is this, his anger diminished and left right away. He made his statement, he made his response, and then he went back to loving one another. And this is the compassion that we find competitive in the church family scenarios that we're experiencing today, because people are questioning everything. And you're supposed to. You are supposed to. That's when I made that comment, study to show thyself approved unto God. Workman needs not be ashamed, rapidly dividing the word of truth. And I add rapidly, changing it, because discernment is also truth. You know, you ever get that feeling, Pete, inside of yourself where you're going, that just doesn't line up. I just don't really fall into that interpretation, if you will. What you have to do at that point is to sit back and add the reasons why. Why do you not fall for this interpretation? What inside of your body and your essence and your soul moved you to believe that this may not be truthful or factual? And this is where we're at today. So what do we have? Mass confusion, global confusion. It's like the Epstein files and how things were blocked and stopped from being released as promised they would be from day one when the new administration came into play. But you know what? There's 7 other countries right now that are picking up those investigations, and they're doing the work, and things are coming forward. So for those of you that defend or tend to look at it another way or whatever, let us wait for the evidence to roll in, and let us make sound and solid decisions instead of pointing fingers based on half-truths or a misunderstanding of information. As you know, Pete, I was a private investigator for a number of years. I had my own agency, 4 agents working under me. So I'm a real digger. I just love to sink my teeth into it. And I don't follow the news or the media or any of that kind of a stuff. I pray first, and then what I do is I go right into court documents, court records, thegovernment.com, on the Epstein file stuff, find something that I'm curious about or need an answer to, and then I start researching that answer. And I do it through non-media sites. The worst thing you can do in the world right now is to, oh my God, help us all, is to fall into what you see on various news media sources. There's podcast shows that seem to be valid and legitimate, but they're not. And what this is an absolute, we're getting ready to enter an era that we have never, ever seen in humankind before. And what's happening is evil is becoming exposed, Pete. And it's irrefutable, the evidence, the mountains and mountains of evidence where people would defend to a point now on a daily basis. I'm getting response from so many different people saying, Pastor, thank you for sharing this. I looked it up. Yeah, it's valid. I looked it up the way you said to look things up so I can get and understand the truth. And then when we get it, by all means, share it. But make darn good and sure you have the facts correct. And if you remember last year, I did one segment where I was wrong on my facts. And you know what I did is I accepted my responsibility and I apologized to my entire platform and said, I've just found out that this was not truthful. I apologize to all of you, and I will strive to do better delivering proper information. Sure. It's my responsibility as a senior pastor of decades. I've been a pastor decades. And I'm also a hospice chaplain. So you know that side of me. And I've been certified in hospice work almost 27 years now. And I watch people die. I'm present with them in their final breath. I look into their eyes and I see a clear understanding that until I was assassinated and left for dead, that I never understood. That final moment when you know death is coming on, and all of a sudden you feel such a love and such a confidence in getting ready to enter into that which we don't understand, which is a mystery to us. But the mystery becomes clear in that moment of the acceptance of the dying process. And it really helped me a lot, Pete, because I was able to remember people that would look me in my face and they would say thank you or God bless you or I love you. They would become warm and full of something. And then within 1 to 2 minutes, their life ceased to exist. So many people as they die that I've witnessed, and I've witnessed dozens and dozens and dozens of deaths. They don't have a fear of what's to come because now they have an acceptance of where it's going. So in this conversation, I bring that relative point up to understand that clarity is essential when you talk about church and state. Why do pastors today bring up the impact, if you will, of statehood, governments, administrations that conflict with church? Well, the answer is you need to dig a little bit darn deeper. There's a reason for everything, but get in line with the facts, get in line with the truth. And if you do make a mistake, own it. Step up to the plate and say, yeah, this is what I believe. This is how I found that information. I do now believe that it was wrong, and I humbly apologize. And I got wonderful responses, even from Republican Party people that would sit there and go, right on, Pastor. We accept that. And thank you for doing that. Now we're working together. See, that's the beauty of it. And you and I have a background of years working outside the wire. We've both been around other forms of religion in countries that looked at God.
Well, this is the thing I wanted to bring in. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I don't want to get too far past this point. So we often think of a separation of church and state, right? And so yes, right. And that's a conversation that we struggle with here in the States, and it's not a separation of church from the state. Like it's like you get to pick your church, even if it's no church. That's what you get to do, and you don't get to
Yes.
have Catholicism forced on you. Now, where the limits of those things are, boy, that's a different conversation. But in
Yeah.
most of the world, that isn't true. And even here, it's like, oh gosh, that isn't as true as we want it to be. For example, I'll submit the capital of my home state. The word is Sacramento. I mean, that's for those who
How funny.
aren't savvy to, aren't savvy to
I
Spanish,
never thought
I
of
mean,
it that way. I lived 16 years in Sacramento. Wow.
right? And you speak Spanish fluently. It
Yeah.
occurred to me only a few years ago too, and I'm like, gosh, there's all kinds of religious things in what we do every day, and so
Yes.
we do live in this religious world. When I was in Iraq, they have the words Allah Akbar on the flags, and so we would
Allah
say
Akbar.
separation of church and state. Well, they disagree on what that means and how much of that they want. They have Sunni and Shia are political parties, not just
Yes.
religious factions. And I was told all the time, this is not about religion, Pete. We would say it's sectarian violence, but it was political violence. It was a political struggle. Yes, and I'll use the Catholics and the Jews in this case, we'll just say, are fighting in Iraq for control. This time as an example, everybody. It's not what's actually happening. And so we would think, oh, this is because of their belief. But no, this was about politics, right? When we look at Afghanistan, when I was there, the government was called the Islamic Republic of, right? And so it's partly theocratic. And so we would say this paradigm of separation of church and state, we would act that way. But Afghanistan was even further away from that than us. And so when we sought to try to improve their condition, we were already hobbled by the fact that we know that if you go into one part of the country or one town and you go talk to one person or one farm or one ranch, you're going to find different political beliefs, different religious beliefs.
Absolutely.
With each person you talk to. Now, a lot of them will commingle and everything else, and there might be like, this is a red city or it's a blue, but okay, great. But even in then, you can go inside of that city and you meet the next pastor, you meet the next druggist, you meet the next or whatever, and those person will be a collection of different beliefs, often contrary to everything else. And so when we say separation of church and state, it doesn't mean that you get what you want. Matter of fact, it means that as that flock moves around, right, going back to our original beginning here, that you have to be able to withstand your brother and your sister's political and religious differences with you. That's what freedom is about. It's not about getting what you want every day. That's totalitarian. We have to figure out how to back off and let Republicans be Republicans, let the Democrats be the Democrat, and people like me who are in the middle, let the middle folks like, you must pick a side. Well, I don't have to pick a side. I'm not. Matter of fact, the more you say that, the more I realize, no, I don't have to pick a side. I can go out and I can focus on love. I can focus on work. I can focus on all these other things because I'm not picking a side. Look, pick a side if you want. If that's your vibe, if that's how your part of the flock works, great. And then we all have to still get together and try to work on these problems.
Well, and Pete, the thing that concerns me, if you will, right now, specifically here in the United States, is people that are of the Jewish faith, of the Catholic faith, people that are Muslim, people that are Wiccans, for God's sakes. When I completed my associates in chaplaincy years ago, the thing that we were ingrained and imprinted upon us is to always respect another person's by what they call their God. And it's very hard to do when you're as devout a Christian as someone like myself is. But, over a period of time, you see where that's going with that mutual respect and understanding. Okay, I don't understand your Muslim direction. Can you teach me? Can you explain it to me? And let's compare. And that's what I would do with hospice patients that required their form of service, if you will. And if there wasn't a Muslim pastor in the area or in the immediate vicinity at the VA hospital, then someone like me that had a degree in chaplaincy would be called in for that effect. And it really became an interesting, because it all comes down to the one applied principle that Christ gave us as the second commandment. For God's sakes, love each other, respect each other, stand with it. And I see the clock ticking in the corner up here. We're probably getting close to the very end of this. I don't want to go over too much, because I really loved our conversation today, Pete. And I think that people will carry with them. So in closing this episode, I can only say that as you look to a stranger, look at that stranger and look upon that stranger as someone that could very well be your family member that someone is looking at. Someone's sitting on a sidewalk that's homeless and without, and people will tend to walk around because they just aren't comfortable with seeing someone going through that. Envision that as being someone that's your family member, someone that's your friend of a lifetime, someone that is not bothering you. They're not reaching out. They're not performing what they are as existing. And we need to have respect to that. It's the same thing in the political forum. And I'm going to say it here now. Every one of you Republicans that are out there, I do have nothing but love and respect for your choices. And I mean that with all of my heart. And I can only hope that in time we can come to a comfortable forum of a mutual respect, because whatever you believe should be honored and respected. And if it's wrong, then it should be explained to you and taught to you to where you understand it and you can fix the wrongs and make the rights. Pete, why don't you close us out today with your final statement?
You know, we have people in our lives that we have perceptions of, even if we know each other dearly. You and I know each other. We talk all the time. And there's sometimes when we have to, we got kind of are drifting apart because you're working on something, I'm working on, but we always come back, just like right now.
Well, you're my family to me, period.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So even if we don't interact every day, we're very close. But I still don't know what's going on in your life every day. And it's not all my business. And so I say that, and you and I are very close, right?
Yes.
I train in a martial art, and the guy who runs my studio, who trains me and is kind of like my shepherd in this regard, I'm getting ready to go travel abroad and go do some things. And so I said, hey, before I go, I want to get some guidance from you on where I need to focus. And so he's like, yeah, come in, we'll do a private one-on-one on whatever, Wednesday. And so I came in, and we were just doing, like, he's got his coffee and I'm just ready to go in my outfit and everything. And I'm like, how are you? And he goes, man, I've had a rough week. This is a man who's strong, who's powerful, right? He is such a great coach and mentor in terms of like mindset and, all of the things that you want out of someone to kind of guide you in this martial art, living mental kind of thing. And then he said, the guy who taught him, his shepherd, had taken his own life, not even 48 hours before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, and I didn't see him the rest of the week. He didn't come in and teach because he needed space from his practice, from his martial, from his dojo. And we had a long talk. So here I am, completely in my world. Here's what I'm going to do next. Here's what I need from you. And he's trying to give it to me. He comes in spite of everything else. And his friend, his mentor, his father, in terms of like the martial arts sense, has just suddenly, without notice, without a letter, taken his own life. And so you think you understand the person that you're talking to, but if we don't slow down long enough to really let that person be that person, we risk being too focused on the self. We risk allowing what we perceive to be in front of us to not be the actual thing that's in front of us. And so I use my friend, my mentor, my sensei, my professor as an example, because we all have these people. Now imagine if you scope back and go, all Democrats are libtards, right? Like that isn't genuine, right? We can go out. The best way to see and love the United States and its people is to not look at the idiot box, not to put this thing in your hand.
I agree.
But to go and see these people, see where the struggles are, understand who they are. And you see struggles all the time, Hal. So I'm just saying, encouraging everybody, before you package everybody up in this negative thing, if someone's hurting, if someone's positive, you talk to them and understand them. If you slow down and do that and kind of be a pastor of your own little flock, you will find that, the world is much more complex and requires much more deliberate behavior than what we want to do when we respond emotionally to everything. And by the way, everything being thrown at us is geared to make us respond emotionally. You and I know all about that. So there you go. That's my closing. Calm down, everybody. Slow down. Love one another.
There you go, folks. And as I close out with my brother Pete, I want you to know that I love you with all of my heart, not just part of it. You are my family. You're just an amazing person, and everything you've done for me that has impacted and changed my journey in these last few years has really been received with great respect for you and the man you are. So that being said, I want to wish the audience, God bless each and every one of you. Stand up for one another. Don't stand against one another. Share that love that you've been blessed with to feel, and let others feel that love instead of this horrific division time we're going through. So God bless you all. Pete, God bless you, brother. Have a great day.
Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.